Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you to week 5 of Relationship Summer School. I'm doing something a little bit differently here. I've got it here on Zoom for those that are into the Zoom. I'm excited to see you. And for those that are here with me, I wanted to start at 8 o'clock, but of course, with me being a busy man, I have a ton of things that I had to do. So I was trying to get here a little bit earlier, but unfortunately, time got away from me. But I'm starting here at 8:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7:15 for those on the Central, 6:15 for those that are on the Mountain Time, and 5:15 for those that are on the Pacific Standard time here. But I wanted to, this particular week, I wanted to allow everyone to kind of get an idea. Now, for those that are watching on Facebook, you are getting obviously the live experience here, but those that are within Zoom, they are actually getting the actual presentation that's here in front of me. But I want to, the notes are still going to be the same. We're still going to be breaking it down just as if it was in front of me here on social media, Facebook, that is. So I'm going to dive into the intimacy factor. And I'm letting those in on Zoom. And you guys are exclusively getting a chance to see this on Facebook. I wanted to give you guys just a sneak preview of what's been going on for like the last 4 weeks. This setting, quiet, but it has been in the Zoom. So tonight I'm going to give you guys just a little bit. I'm going to give you the whole presentation of what it would be like to be a part of Relationship Summer School. Those that have had a chance to dive into it, they'll tell you that it has definitely been a treat. But tonight I wanted to do this because I believe that this particular aspect is one of the more important aspects of relationships. And it is going to dive into what we would consider to be the intimacy factor. So last week I dived into vulnerability. This week I'm going to dive into intimacy. Now, I will warn you, I'm a little bit unorthodox. So I'm not going to give you any of the cultural definitions of what you would consider to be intimacy. I'm going to give it to you from a framework that is going to lead you down a road that is going to have you thinking a little bit. My goal is to get you to think outside of the box. So welcome to the Intimacy Factor, week 5, Relationship Summer School with yours truly. All right, let's get started. Last week, what's going on? Mrs. Garrison, the Reels superstar. Make sure you guys on Facebook, make sure you guys follow her. She's going to get you set for Reels from now until the end of time. She's amazing at it. Last week, we talked about the importance and the impact of vulnerability and how it is the entrance way to what we're going to talk about tonight, intimacy. Vulnerability is where intimacy begins. Any other entrance to intimacy cannot be without vulnerability. You cannot enter intimacy without vulnerability. What's going on, Takesha? Good to see you on here, Facebook. So you have to enter into intimacy from a level of vulnerability. So a lot of times people will say intimacy, and that's really just a word to them. But tonight we're going to define what intimacy really looks like so that you can have a better definition. And then when someone says, hey, I want intimacy with you, do you really know what that means? Do you really know what intimacy means? Do you really know what it means? And it's where its vulnerability is where it begins. Any other entrance to intimacy without vulnerability is most likely not going to be intimacy. It's most likely just going to be something that kind of occurred, might be just a moment, but in order to enter into vulnerability, to enter into intimacy, you need vulnerability. Now, let's define intimacy. This is one thing that I'm going to go ahead and tell you now. If you're going to be with me, you better have a dictionary. Because you know what I get tired of? I get tired of in the culture, different people saying words and they don't know what it means. Well, I just want this. Do you really know what it means? Or are you just saying it because it's a cultural revolutionary word that you heard? So we're going to dive into what intimacy really means. And I'm going to surprise you because one of these definitions is something that has been described as intimacy, but it's really only a byproduct of that. So let's define intimacy. The state of being intimate, a close, familiar, usually affectionate or loving personal relationship with another person or group. Now, we're not going to dive into the group aspect because we're simply going to be dealing with two people. Okay, the group aspect, it's a whole nother, when we're dealing with intimacy as far as a group, we're dealing with probably like a business, or we're dealing with like a team. But tonight we're going to be dealing with the intimacy between two people. A close association with detailed knowledge or deep understanding of place, subject, period of history. Okay, and then we're going to look at it. It's an act of expression serving as a token of familiarity, affection, or the like. And then here's the one that I said was going to be the one that has a tendency to be last on the list. It's last on this list, but it's first on many people's understanding of intimacy. Sexual intercourse. Notice the last definition of intimacy, sex. So why is it that sex is last on the definition list of intimacy, yet it is first in many people's minds of what intimacy really is? Notice that? How is it that the last thing on the list ends up being first, but it's really lower on the priority as far as what intimacy is? Really, sex is, it's really something that can happen because of intimacy, but it is not intimacy itself. It is a result of what could be intimacy, but any sex outside of intimacy is simply just sex. So we know that there's a deeper connection that's involved. All right. Sex is not intimacy, but a byproduct of intimacy. If you take sex off the table, you find out how deep the connection really can build. Now, y'all, let's take this thing called sex off of the table. Let's take it off of the table. Let's take all the hunching. Let's take all the hugging and the kissing and the humping and all the other stuff that y'all love to do in the confines of the secrecy of your own homes and beds. Let's take that off of the equation real quick. Let's talk about it. Now, is it important? It is in certain aspects, but let's take that off of the table. What connection do you really have? What connection are you really building if you're taking that off of the table? What do you really have if we take that off the table? Can I be honest with you? You might not have much if you take that off the table. Some people, they lead with that. But intimacy is not defined by sex. It's a byproduct of intimacy. And if you take it off the table, ask yourself, is there an opportunity for intimate connection? Is there? Some would say no, I need it. But I would have to disagree and say, if you take that off the table and you really get to having real intimate connection, you might see that there is more of an organic growth, because relationships are meant to be organic and not because of an early release of feelings that are not yet ready to be explored. You want to know something that sex does? Can I tell you? Can I give y'all a little secret? Sex can potentially bring an early release of feelings that are not yet matured, but are masked as intimacy. Y'all want an example? Because I believe in examples. Now, for y'all that have been involved in some things, it ain't got good to you. It got good. I got to drink some water right here. I got to, because this, I don't want my throat getting dry telling the test butter. But some of us who was doing what grown folks do, it got good to us. And we mess around and say some words that we really didn't mean. I just love you in the moment, but the moment, for side note, not trying to be, but why is it that the moment you didn't have some sex with somebody, all of a sudden, all these things that you didn't know was wrong with them just come out of the woodwork? You know what I'm saying? Like, listen, some fellas, tell the truth. You did not pay attention to all the stretch marks that she had until you got done and you looked over and she was like, you looked at, I was like, wait a minute, hold on. I did not see that. Ladies, you probably didn't pay attention. He finessed you, he got you into thinking that, hey, it was good. And then you woke up the next morning with him and his breath was absolutely terrible. Terrible. I mean, hygiene just terrible. I mean, as soon as you roll over, you cuddle, and you wake up and lay next to him, and you say good morning, he say good morning, you like, oh my God, what did I just lay next to? Sex, I believe, is a great thing. But I think sometimes it can bring out feelings that you may not necessarily be ready to express, or they're not fully matured. And so you're thinking it's them, but in actuality, it's just the early release of feelings that you haven't yet really examined and say, well, why do I like them? If it's just because the sex is good, that's not enough. So it's very important that you understand that sometimes, most times, if there is no intimacy and there is sex that's involved, it's going to bring out an element that you're really not ready to explore. It'll have you making decisions that you really aren't ready to make. It'll have you thinking that you have safety there. And really all you had was just a moment of connection that was good to your body at that particular moment, but wasn't best for you. So understand that sex potentially releases feelings early that are yet to be matured. And you may find yourself with somebody that you might not necessarily like. Listen, I've been a living witness. Tonight, we're gonna be real. Tonight. Listen, in my former young tenderoni sinful days, I'm gonna call it sinful days, because it was, it was a sin. I messed around and got myself involved with some ones. I woke up the next morning and I said, what the H-E-L, another L is silent because I don't want to cuss on him. He said, what the H-E-L, silent L, was I thinking? You had some sex. It might have been good, but you didn't take a look at it until you realized, but that ain't necessarily what I wanted. And so now you're feeling like, hey, What else? Listen, Song of Solomon, do not awaken love before it's time. Yes, Kelly, been there, done that. Been there, done that. Currently drinking water to thank the Lord for my deliverance. All right, so sex can be an early release. So now that we have established that sex is something that needs to be developed from intimacy, intimacy should bring a level of completeness and fulfillment that can only be achieved through deep connection. A deep connection is considered to be a high level of vulnerability. A high level of vulnerability is you being able to share from a place of safety. There are different levels of vulnerability, but a deep connection should be a high level vulnerability, which means that it's building up from the previous levels. It goes beyond just my name is Brian. It goes beyond just my birthday, June 25th, 1983. It goes beyond my height, 6'4", almost 6'5". It goes beyond even the degrees that I got behind you. It goes beyond the car that I drive. It's the makeup of who I am. And so when you're looking at intimacy, it is a deep connection with who you are, where you came from, and where you're going. So it requires some conversations, some deep conversations. Deep conversations in what can you provide for me? Can I say something? You ready? Provision is not intimacy. That's something that a person chooses to do. So provision is not intimacy. Intimacy is an honest conversation with another person about who you are. Transparency. How did you become who you are? What makes up the person that you are? Where are you headed in the future? What does the future look like? And here's the thing. Intimacy is something that is progressive. It's not an event. It's a progressive thing. You can think that you have intimacy in 2022, June 29, 2022. And on June 30th, something can happen that requires a deeper level of intimacy. And you can only build from what you got the previous day, the previous days. Because intimacy is not strengthened by the things that you match up with, okay? For example, I might like this particular young lady. Ladies, y'all might like a dude that's 6 foot something and has his stuff together financially. But that's not intimacy. That's just information about what they have or information about what identifies them, but that's not intimacy. Intimacy is how do they approach life? How do they handle conflict? How do they handle when life happens? How do they treat you when life happens? What are some of the weaknesses that they dealt with? Who has hurt them? Who do they value? Who has helped them? Intimacy is not strengthened with possessions. It's not strengthened with even their money, how much money they make. It's not strengthened with their height. It's not strengthened with the house that they have. Intimacy is strengthened with vision. Who do you see them to be? What is it that they are designed to do on this earth? And how well have they exhibited that aspect throughout the conversation? So intimacy requires vision. Do they have a vision for their lives? If they don't necessarily have a vision for their lives, that means that they may not necessarily be able to see Men are scared of intimacy. You are right. I'm definitely, to a certain extent, I definitely have kept myself. Well, some of these sisters, I'm not going to be intimate with none of y'all because let me tell y'all what y'all gonna be trying to do. I Y'all gonna be trying to feed me and make me fat so I won't be attracted to nobody else. In some instances, intimacy for me requires food. If you can feed me good, you get me to tell anything. Feed me, or you happen to get some drink in my system. What's going on, my friend? Good to see you on here. You get a little bit of drink in somebody's system. You get in to be intimate and vulnerable and tell all their stuff. Don't get me started. You want some intimacy? If you really want some intimacy from somebody, spike their drink. Put something extra in that drink. They're gonna tell you everything they did. I know I did when I was in my heyday. You want me to tell the truth? What pastor do? Pour me a drink. What T-Pain say? Buy me a drink. If you buy me a drink, I'm gonna tell on everybody, including the devil and all his cousins. That's how you get me in that space. But that's neither here nor there. So intimacy is strengthened with vision. Where are they? Winter, don't you do that. Don't you do that. Try to tell all my stuff. I'm not telling you all my stuff. Now, listen, I got my drink right here. Listen, it's the only thing I'm doing. Y'all stop playing. Anyway, it's strengthened with vision, meaning there has to be a place that they're going. It can't just be, I'm here. No, where are they headed? What are they doing? Why is it that they are the way they are? And how are they managing to move forward? Deeper intimacy can be shared between two individuals. If another person is attempted to be added to that level of intimacy or that intimate connection, it becomes divided. Intimacy between people are meant for just two people, meaning adding a person that's not authorized into the mix can affect the intimacy. It's meant for just two people. Intimacy is about two people. Now, here's the part in relationships that I think we need to have a conversation about. When you're really intimate with someone, is it possible to let somebody into an intimate space that has already been reserved for somebody else? Or does it affect the intimacy that is being built? Because here's the thing. If I'm building a deep connection with a woman and she's getting to know me, she's getting to understand me, she's getting to find out who I am, any moment that switches, because I've been intimate with the woman that I've been intimate with, and I'm talking about the getting to know and getting close, what ends up happening is the person that I've been intimate with can see the changes because now their intimacy is divided. Anybody remember Why Did I Get Married To? It was Tyler Perry's character and his wife. And they were in an intimate moment at the very beginning of the movie. And he noticed a change in his wife. And she didn't have to say anything. And he looked at her and he was like, what happened? That there's a change. There's a change in what I know about you. Somebody else has your attention. Intimacy it's geared to be between two people. So which means that there should be boundaries that are created when there is an intimate connection, which means that nobody should be able to get in the midst of that intimate connection. And so it's hard to believe that, yeah, Sheila, poor Sheila. It's hard to believe that a man and a woman can share an intimate connection, and either one of them think it's okay to allow another person inside that connection when we have gotten to know each other so deeply that every movement, Ashley, it's you gotta you gotta listen to it. Ashley Munson, you guys, she is one of the world's greatest political leaders, going to be doing amazing things in politics and in the community. You guys look out for her. She's going to bloom. She's already blooming, but she's going to bloom even greater very, very soon. She has an amazing platform on Instagram where she breaks down everything that happens in politics, everything that happens in laws and government. She will break it down and give it to you in a very, very clear and precise way. So Ashley, thank you for tuning in. But when there is an intimate connection between two people, it's very hard to have another individual come in and be able to experience the deep connection. I gotta do a commercial. You know, if you're doing something in the community, I gotta do a commercial. But it's very difficult to bring somebody else into the connection that you're building with someone else, unless you have started to give your vulnerability to someone else. The pathway to intimacy is your vulnerability. And so anytime that you allow yourself to be vulnerable with someone, you have to be very, very careful that you don't allow too much vulnerability to get into that connection, that you end up breaking the intimate connection that you've already built. That if there is something that goes on, that you find a way to have the conversation and in a safe space. Now, are there therapists and coaches that can help you? Yes, there is. But those people are authorized to help you get to a particular place to keep the connection. Anybody that is not, anybody else is endangering what you've already built with someone else. This means that being faithful is a prerequisite for building a deep connection. Someone that's going to be faithful, someone that you can really look at and say, hey, the information that I'm sharing with you, you're not going to violate this connection by going and potentially exposing me to someone else. Intimacy requires deep honesty, not from just one, fellas, not from just a woman. I get sick and tired of these ladies being hurt because they poured out their heart to a man and he ain't give nothing. So she attached herself to him because she's laid down these intimate and deep details, but he ain't open up. But because of the emotions and because she feels close to him, she lays down everything. Intimacy is to be built between two people. Intimacy is never meant to be one-sided. If it is one-sided intimacy, it's not intimacy. It's simply a conversation. It's simply you sharing vulnerabilities. It cannot be one-sided. So intimacy requires two. A point to point, point to point. Not, I'm just going to be intimate with you and lay it down and then you don't give me anything back. It requires reciprocity from both sides. That's how intimate connection can be built. Intimacy, it requires a deep connection or deep honesty from both. It is built from the truth of who you are, not who you claim to be. So intimacy, you can't hide. It exposes who you are. You can sit up here and act all crazy and act all this in front of people. But when you are intimate with someone, it's going to tell on you who you are. It's going to tell on what it is that you, it's going to tell on who you really are. It tells, say, hey, this is who you are. That's why some of, wives, they be getting mad at their husbands. You be ahead cutting up out in public. I'm gonna dive into some church folk. Because some church folk, they be acting all holier than thou and acting like you got it all together. But then when you get home, you realize you ain't as well put together as you thought, and your wife knows it. You're not as well put together as you thought. You can fake the funk with everybody else, but you can't fake the funk with the person that you've been intimate with, because they know you, they understand you. You spent time letting them know who you are. So it exposes that individual to who you really are and what it is that makes up who you are. Now, there are types of intimacy. I have 4. Emotional intimacy, that's one of our higher needs. Mental intimacy, that is the most important. Spiritual intimacy, which connects you to their future. Physical intimacy, that's the most emphasized. Intimacy is intended to be a high level of connection. Now, all of these types of intimacy have to coexist with each other. You cannot have physical intimacy and not have emotional intimacy. You cannot have mental intimacy and cannot have spiritual intimacy. You need all 4 of these in some high level capacity in order for there to be a highly functioning intimate relationship. It's developed to be a high level of connection. Sex, as we said before, by itself is a low level of intimacy. It can potentially increase the anticipation and the expectation for more, but does not reveal intent. Think about how many people are just, they're convincing people they done had sex, you done laid down, you done did it. Now there's these intimate feelings that want to be expressed because this particular person may have felt like, hey, we've had sex. Now it's time for us to explore more. And the other person was like, no, I just wanted to get it in and get it out. That's why sex alone is not intimacy. It's actually a very low level of intimacy by itself. It's a low level of vulnerability. It's lower on the totem pole of vulnerability and intimacy. But for some reason, people put it at the high end. It's not. Sex by itself is a very low level connection. It has to be added with something to be effectual and powerful. It's powerful by itself to that person that's immature. If you are immature, sex can overpower you. It can cause you to think that something is going to happen. It can cause you to overcompensate and overpredict that something's going to happen between you and another person. But it is really not best to just engage in it simply because you feel like, hey, it's somebody I want to. Now, are there going to be people that's going to go out here and do their thing? Yes. But that's a whole nother topic. I'm not going to dive into it. In the aspect of intimacy, it's a lower level connection. True intimacy requires commitment, which means that there's got to be a commitment in order to get to intimacy, because it's continual. Intimacy brings a diagnosis of how you can help the other person. It gives wisdom of what the other person needs. When you're intimate with somebody, it helps you diagnose what it is they need. It gives you a knowledge and an understanding of this is what this person needs, because we've sat down and we've built a connection. We've built a pathway to learning each other. So with a pathway comes wisdom. If you think about, and those that are believers, when you think about your relationship with God, the wisdom does not come from it just being you just picking up on things. The wisdom comes because you've built a intimate relationship with him. And so with that intimate relationship with him, it builds a wisdom. He gives you understanding. The closeness between two people is developed through intimacy. It brings an alignment. When you are intimate and you guys are coming together, you and the other person, you're coming together, there's what I consider to be a constant realigning that you have with each other's lives. Because if you are intimate and it just stops, but the person keeps evolving and you're not intimate, then you don't really know where this person is going. You don't really know who this person is. So intimacy gives us a constant access to realigning us and ready for this particular individual that we're growing with. So intimacy brings a realignment between you and the other person. In life, you're going to constantly be realigning who you are and realigning it with the person that you are becoming, and vice versa, which means that because there's a realignment, now you're not going off of just the things that you've learned about them 5 years ago, but you're learning things that they are now. One of the problems in relationships is that assumption, speculation, and insecurity are used to learn a person. We can base our revelation of that particular individual or that information about that particular individual based off of a past thought process. The person that you're with, if they are evolving, they're going to evolve and they're going to change. And you have to be ready for the change. And intimacy gives you an inside tap to who they really are, which means that you're not going to just stay the same. And if the person's evolving, that means that you being intimate and getting to know them, you will move right along with them. When you're intimate, it kills the assumption. When you're intimate, it kills the speculation. When you're intimate, it kills the insecurity. You don't have to be insecure because you realize that when a person is being intimate with you and you're being intimate with them, it removes the insecurity and it brings together a safe space for you to just express who you are and the change that comes along with it. There's a change that occurs in every relationship. But if there's no intimacy, I don't know the information that I need to know to accommodate the evolution that they are. So what intimacy does is that intimacy brings you into a level of understanding of who they are. And so now you're not lost and wondering, who is this person? Because you've been intimate. And intimate is about honesty and connection and bringing them together to understand fully who they are called to become and what it is that their future looks like. Intimacy is surgery. It brings a greater understanding of the other person. Now, when we look at surgery, surgery, it basically corrects an area of concern. When there is a surgery, what it does is that it brings together a correction of an area that needs to be fixed. If you ever go in and do any surgery, it's an area that needs to be adjusted. So intimacy brings adjustments. It brings a greater understanding. It adjusts your perspective. Intimacy brings a surgery in your mind toward that person, which means that when there's intimacy, he came in as a provider. He came in as one that he was able to take care of the things that need to be taken care of in a household. Intimacy says, okay, he goes through a rough time in his life, but you've been intimate with him and you understand that this is only a season. But see, a lot of times when we're looking at an individual that walks through we're not necessarily prepared for that because we're thinking that if they come in and they're able to do these things, we assume that changes cannot occur. But these things happen in order to bring intimacy. Now, what I'm not saying is, ladies, don't connect yourself with a man that is not at least going to be a provider for you. And I would more prefer be one that he financially does come into your life and does bring provision. But the intimacy that comes along with that is understanding that there may be some changes that occur. And since you guys have spent intimate time with each other, you understand that this is not who he is. This is just a part of the growth that comes along with him. And then you're able to be there and walk with him as he's getting himself back into the position and in even a better position than he was before. Intimacy is a surgery. It's a correction. It's correcting what you might have assumed. You might have assumed something about him. A fear might have came in. You guys are intimate. Now the surgery on that mind is done. And now you can say, hey, it really was something that I allowed to get in and get the best of me. But now that we have been intimate, we had a conversation, we talked, we spent time with one another, I realized that was just a fear that crept in. Intimacy brings a constant realignment between you and the other person. It's constant. It's not just one thing, it's constant. You're going to be forever, if the person that you choose to spend your life with, you're going to forever be looking at the fact that there's going to be change that's going to occur. And with knowing that, understanding that, you got to be understanding that there's going to be a constant realigning that's going to go on. Intimacy is information being shared on a deeper and clear level. You're sharing stuff on a deeper level. And as you're growing and learning, you're understanding who that person is. Intimacy is not an emotion. Whoever said that it was an emotion, they lied to you. But it can be felt through emotions. But emotions alone cannot strengthen intimacy. But information solidifies emotions. Most of the times, how you feel has to come from a place of information. Any emotion that's built from a place of speculation or insecurity or from a place of assumption is eventually going to cause that emotion to be illegitimate. Again, intimacy is between two people. Any additional connection between those two people from another person eventually can affect that connection. So it's between two people, not a third. Third person? This is between you and that other person. How women build intimacy? Through your emotions, physical touch, connection points, which I have a whole diagram of connection points. If you would like me to send that to you, after this live, I will give it to you, the connection points, and that's through the physical touch aspect. Mentally, quality time, desires to be a part of his future plans, support. Women, they build their emotions, they solidify their intimacy through their emotions expressed. The physical touch. Women, they love that intimate touch, and I have the connection points that I can give to you guys if you want it. Mentally, meaning that you're stimulating her mind to be able to rest those emotions and know that what you're saying is going to be what it is. Quality time, getting to know her, desires to be a part of his future plan, meaning that she wants to be involved in what he does and support. A woman is intimate with you when she offers her support, meaning that she wants to get to know what she can do to help you. How men build intimacy. Sharing of his vision. If a man shares his vision with you and who he is, it's a level, it's an act of intimacy. Sharing of his vulnerability, meaning the ins and outs of who he is, or the pathway that leads to intimacy. That's building intimacy. Deep and meaningful conversations about the future. Deep and meaningful conversations about the future. Is the future that he's talking about, is he talking to you about it? Is he letting you know where you fit in? Or is he just talking about the future? He's not involving you. Support during difficult times. How a man shows up for you during difficult times. It's an intimate action. Time shared. The time that he spends with you, it determines how he views you. A man that wants to spend time with you is a man that's willing to share things with you that will allow the intimacy to open up. Now, here's something that I want you guys to take into mind, because we're at the end of here, and I'm going to shut down Zoom over here, and I'm going to stay on Facebook for a little bit and talk. But intimacy starts with you. Uh-oh. You mean it don't start with the other person? Let me drink my water. It starts with you. The more you know about who you are, the better you are equipped to be intimate with another person. Intimacy requires deep analysis of oneself and consistent self-discovery. In the process, other people help you discover deeper about who you are, but it all starts with you. Intimacy starts with you. The more that I know about myself, the easier it is for me to be honest about who I am. And the easier it is for me to connect with who I need to connect with, that's going to be able to handle the information that I've learned. And so, have you sat down and got to know yourself? You got people out here, they don't know themselves. They don't have an idea, but you want somebody to be intimate with you. You want someone that's going to be here and walk with you, but you don't even know who you are. You don't know who you are. You don't know what you're necessarily called to do. You don't know what direction you're going, but you're ready to share your life with someone. You're ready to share your life, and you're ready to give that to someone. And you're giving them a blank notebook that just has, ooh, I'm 5'7", got all of these wonderful contraptions that God gave me that are good to look at, but it's not enough. It's not enough to just be just a blank notebook. What information am I getting from you? What information am I getting from you? Intimacy starts with you. It doesn't start with the other person. I cannot require another person to be real with me without first being real with myself. And I think one of the issues in relationships today is people are expecting a real person to give out real information, and you ain't sat down and got to know you. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. But I have finished my Zoom for the night. So week 5 of Relationship Summer School is done for the classroom on Zoom, and I'm going to go on to Facebook, and we're going to have a little bit more of a conversation because, hey, can share a little bit of stuff. Now that class is over and I can dive into some stuff. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and close it out real quick and then we're done. And for those that are on Zoom, I will have the link to the class so that you can have it and watch it maybe about an hour from now, so that you can go ahead and get yourself situated with that and whatnot. So let me go ahead and put the end to that right here.